Hi, Reality Riffing. Welcome to the Immense Grace Binge series. These are interviews that I have done in the past season, 2019-20, of great women from all over the world doing incredibly powerful, esoteric, and magical things. So I'm very excited to share with you some of these profound conversations. Join me as I sit down with Lesley Jackson, who is both a scholar and a mystic, and I love these combinations. She truly is a scholar and an anthropologist, and was very fascinated, particularly with Egypt. But as that fascination grew, she also began to have some mystical experiences with the different gods and goddesses of Egypt and their different frequencies, powers, and transmissions. She's a prolific author. She's a very fascinating mind and thought leader in the realm of how these mythos interweave with both our ancient selves and our future selves, the future of humanity, the way that the humans and the gods walk among each other on planet Earth. I hope you enjoy this in-depth and really deeply profound conversation that I had with Lesley Jackson. So excited to have Lesley Jackson today to talk about all of your wisdom, but particularly your work with Isis, the eternal goddess of Egypt and Rome. And welcome to Reality Riffing. Welcome to Immense Grace.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be able to speak to you.
So you're out somewhere in the UK, in rural UK, yes?
That's right. East Yorkshire. So it is about 200 miles north of London on the east coast.
Beautiful. How did you get interested in Egyptian mythology and the archetypal aspects of it?
I've always had an interest in mythology, ancient history, but I tended to look on mythology more as a form of science fiction, science fantasy. I was particularly interested in archaeology. I was a member of the Archaeology Society for a long time, and whenever we travelled, I would look out the old ruins and the gods and goddesses. It was probably about 20 years ago that I started to get a more spiritual interest in the ancient religions. I was originally trying to get in touch more with a local goddess, one from Britain rather than one from another land. But I was doing a lot of meditating and reading, and I just kept being pulled towards Isis. Of course, I'm very persistent, so I started reading and connecting with her, and all of a sudden it just came to me that it is the area that I should be progressing. It's the area I'm interested in. So that was really my first introduction. What I particularly like about ancient Egypt is you have the words of the people at the time who were worshipping their deities, and you have comments about the Greeks and Romans who were also present at the time when it was an active religion. And by studying those, I feel I can get closer to what Isis meant to people who were living then.
And what do you think about some of the dating of these actual Isis cults and Egypt more like 12, 13, 14,000 up to 25, 30,000 years ago, as opposed to what the current Egyptologists are timing these kind of mythologies and these reigns of these gods and goddesses?
I tend to follow what the academics are writing and studying quite a bit, and I do try and read the latest research. There are some areas that people know are controversial, and a lot of it is best guess. So I tend to read about something as widely as possible and then try to form my own conclusion. If the consent is a particular date or a particular image or whatever, I probably would be more likely to go to it unless something that says, this isn't wrong, I need to think further. Maybe this person who's put forward another theory is correct. So I do like to look at all angles and then form my own opinion.
And so you originally were kind of trying to go into some of the goddess iconography that is more Celtic, and you kept on being drawn towards the Egyptian mythos. Did I catch that right?
That is correct, yes. I mean, this was more at a spiritual level. It was just from the meditating and visualizing, and it always kept coming back to Isis. So I started reading up about Isis, both works by academics and by pagan authors, and learning more, and then gradually learning more about some of the other deities. So I always felt that Isis was my introduction, and then she guided me to look at other deities. I do think of my writing as an offering. I always dedicate the book to a particular god or goddess it is about. So it is work of devotion as well as a more academic interest.
That's so beautiful. I love that. That's that the goddess is like the offerings. We were just with a very intense Sekhmet temple, and we went into the chamber of Sekhmet. It's locked, but we went in there, and it was a formative experience, let me tell you. And some of the people with us did not understand how to create that kind of devotional experience.
Yes, I mean, it does vary. If you look at what was offered to the Egyptian deities, some of it was what we would call a traditional offering, flowers, incense, things like that. But it doesn't have to be that. And I think, for me personally, I'm offering what I feel is the best I can do.
Yeah.
Rather than just doing a traditional offering or another, maybe some would devote, if they were, say, a healer or something like that, they would devote that work to the relevant deity.
Yeah, we can only offer our greatest offering, whatever that is. So what I'd love to just kind of get into some of the teachings and some of the things that you think are relevant in terms of Isis, and we'll start there. The Isis cults and Isis's teachings to modern day, to right now. I mean, where do you think this really kind of these teachings go through time and space?
I think they do. I mean, particularly Isis, when you get to the later periods, she has developed into the all-goddess. She's assimilating the other goddesses or working with them, and her aspects are covering an increasing range. So once we get to the Greek and Roman period, then it was adopted very quickly by a number of people in Greece and Rome, and with the Roman Empire she did spread. And when you look at what Isis is like in the cult outside of Egypt, she's been slightly changed into more of a Greek goddess, because that is how the people in Greece and Rome and around the Roman Empire understood the goddess to be. But because she has this very caring aspect, a magical aspect, healing aspect, it is just as relevant to someone in ancient Rome as it was to someone in Egypt. She's a very strong presence they can contact with and feel at ease with. And she was particularly in the later stages known as saviour goddess. She would, if an individual called for help, she would respond. And I think it is that is particularly relevant nowadays. If you go back to ancient Egypt, it was critical for their survival that the Nile flooded each year. Now, we've obviously in England, America, whatever, that isn't a critical function, and it doesn't exist in Egypt because of the Hathor endowment control and things like that. So, if all you were doing was taking Isis as a goddess of the Nile flood, then it starts to be a bit academic because it isn't relevant. But when you're taking Isis with all these other aspects, the saviour, the healer, the magician, your guide and friend, she will always fit into any place and any time because she's got the aspect and personality, if you like, which is really universal, and I think there's a longing in people for someone like that. So I think that is why she's a very popular goddess, because she appeals to a wide range of people and can fit into their circumstances.
I think also that with the kind of, we'll call it the, for lack of a better term, the rising of, I call it Femme consciousness, or divine mother frequency on the planet, in this kind of consciousness change. It seems like the Isis kind of frequency is coming more into the collective consciousness. Have you noticed that?
I think definitely. And I think because she's an easy goddess to approach first, that she seems to be a first step. I would have been very wary of initially trying to contact Sekhmet.
Yes.
Or someone like that. I would have been way out of my depth for a first move. I wouldn't have managed. So she is a general introduction. But I think also what helps is the way she has assimilated or been paired with the other goddesses. So by the time you get to the Greek and Roman period, if you read some of their writings, they are saying, oh, we worship Diana or whatever other goddess, but we know that you are Diana. And so by doing that, it's bringing together all the goddesses around the world. And I think for virtually everyone, unless you're a Hindu, you would have been brought up in a culture that believes in just one God. And there is a tendency with some people to translate that and say one goddess. Right. Which, that's not my approach. I have a multitude. But with Isis, you can get that. She can be the all goddess to people, or she can be one of many and switch in and out. And I think that it's that embracing and bringing together the divine feminine in various forms and under various names. And I think you do see that there seems to be an increasing emergence of women working together, rather than, of just a few. I think there is a general consciousness, as you say, is to moving towards not only a divine feminine, but a connection between women and the goddess, and women and each other.
Beautifully said. What I would love to hear your thoughts on and we will move on from just Isis, but I would love to hear your thoughts on Isis and the connection to the Black Madonna. What's your research and anything there for you in terms of the connection?
I think there is. I mean, when I was researching for my Isis book, reading around about the early Christian church, I was finding there's an awful lot of similarity in some areas. The idea of a saviour, the way they have the public worship, the concept of forgiveness of sins, paraphrase. So there is quite a lot there, but Christianity was coming forward as a very sort of strident new religion, very evangelical, but it was all one God, male-dominated. And this was coming to people who had grown up surrounded by various goddesses. Even though they might not be worshipping, they were in their cultural consciousness. And they just couldn't imagine a god without a goddess, especially with the sun involved. So we have the development, obviously, from Isis and Horus to the Virgin Mary and the Christ child. And I think the Black Madonna image is the one coming from Egypt, because obviously the people there would have been dark skinned. So people would have, if they'd have gone to Egypt, they could have seen that. So I think a definite strong link. And I think they also retain quite a bit of sort of mystical, hidden depth about them. You're almost asking you to look deeper. And I know the places they have them, they are very much venerated. And I think, to me, that is that presence of Isis coming through that you don't always get in other Madonna places, statues.
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand, especially many people don't have these kind of historical understandings, but that the Isis cults rivaled Christianity until the Christianity became a state authorized religion. That's
right. Yes, it's one of those, I think, what they call a hinge point, a pivotal point in history. It could have gone, the Isis cult, because there was the cult of Mithras was strong as well. So you have those three, and for various reasons Christianity won. But it was strong, and I think for a lot of people, if they were forced or coerced into going either into a Christian culture or becoming Christianized, they could take Isis and Horus with them, but in the form of the renamed the Virgin Mary and the Christ child.
Right. So I want to pivot a little bit to Isis and the connection to our extraterrestrial history. What's your thoughts on this?
I haven't done much research on that. I must admit I'm a bit wary in some areas that people they would like there to be a connection, so you are desperately trying to find a way of proving that there is. I mean, I am very much interested in astronomy, the thoughts of space travel in science fiction. So I'm not saying I don't believe there are any aliens. I believe there are civilizations out there. They may well have contacted, but I am not convinced myself that there is a direct link.
All right. Well, I love an unbeliever.
Well, I try to be open-minded, But I'm yet to be convinced. I think if you are talking about the concept of a consciousness, or I'm trying to think of right words, but something non-material connection. We thought there was, I noticed a bit in your program about cosmic portals, so there was a kind of intelligence or a power or something coming through that was maybe influencing, helping, or otherwise some people on Earth. I'm probably more attuned to something like that than thoughts of people actually coming and landing and teaching people.
I mean, from certainly reading the walls of Abu Simbel and all these places that we were just at, I mean, it's obvious there were more than one race interacting with each other.
Yes. There's obviously in the south you've got a lot of the Nubians, which are more the African people. You've got people from the Near East, from Libya, contact from the Mediterranean. So it was, at times, it was a very big cultural mix. But the history, the length of time it goes back, and then all of a sudden you have these great pyramid and hieroglyphic scripts, it's almost as if it appears out of nowhere. But there is, if you look back into the pre-dynastic period, you can see a few traces. So you can see there are rock paintings where there are figures that look like deities standing in what could be an image of the solar or lunar bark. So you can see that, the development. But you do get, all of a sudden, you get this outburst. But I think you do get it in other places. You know, you've got nothing, and then you've got a monument like Stonehenge appears. And because everything that went before was lost, we don't know how it developed. Did it develop slowly? Did all of a sudden there was an outbreak of creativity? And sometimes you see that in more modern times, that all of a sudden something particular, a type of music or a style of architecture, it just takes off all over the world, and it's not always of why all of a sudden it's there.
Right.
But I think it's because we're going back such a long period, and the pyramids and things carved in stone last, but anything on wood or pottery or people knowledge and things, that's all lost. So the beginning of, well, I said every religion, every civilization, everything, every culture is so hazy. It is open to so much interpretation. I think you just have to, people believe what they want to believe, that is true for them. But I think you just got to accept that we don't know. So we try and understand, we have to accept what other people think, talk to them. Sometimes it changes your mind, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, we're meaning makers as humans. So what I would love to hear some of your personal spiritual practices to connect with these goddess energies, how that the spiritual part of this kind of started to develop for you.
It just really started as a sort of a vague nagging, that just a pull. And I just started reading, and then I thought, well, I'm going to try some of these meditations and things like that, and just think about them, not try and do a direct contact. So, I would read up about a particular goddess and then just think and meditate. And then once I started reading the pagan books about Egypt, there were all these ideas, they were telling you how to meditate, how to contact the rituals. So it was really a concept of that. I tried to just focus on, initially, I'm looking for a goddess, which one will fit. So I would read about a more local goddess, Bridget, and try and meditate on her and try and understand, and then look at prayers and things, but always coming into that was Isis. So when I turned my attention to Isis, it was a bit of a mixture. It was meditation, and I'd got some beads. So I used to do, like doing the rosary. I'd wrote a few lines, and like Great Goddess Isis, and just repeat them over and over again, and just try and get closer and closer to connection. But sometimes it was just out in nature, or driving along, and you saw the moon rising or the sunset, and that was a connection as well. So, and I tried to connect that to what the Egyptians would be calling it. It was the sunrise, it's the birth of the sun god, and what the moon meant, and how Isis fit in. So it was a combination. But my character just happens to be, I do have a more academic streak. I am quite logical. That comes from, I worked with IT and things like that, and I worked as an amateur archaeologist, and that was quite scientific and things. So that side of my brain is quite dominant. So I could never just follow a path towards meditation and things like that, because to me that was a big chunk. I needed to know a bit more of the facts about it. So it was really a combination of those. And when I'm sitting down to write, I sometimes feel, a spiritual connection with what I'm writing. And I'm making that connection as I'm putting the words down, or as I'm just drawing a little flowchart or whatever on the paper to try and work out where the next chapter is, how to fit it. I sometimes feel I'm getting the connection with that because I'm immersed. I'm thinking just about Isis or whoever I'm writing about, and that is forming the connection as well.
I love that combination. I think it's definitely it's what's beautiful about your work is that it's obvious that you are an academic, but you also have this kind of deep, what I would call reincarnational or incarnational or soul level connection to
Yes, I think soul level connection is, because sometimes it's just, you can't rationalise it. It's just a pull from inside, a longing or a love, and it's just there sometimes.
I didn't catch what you were chanting on the rosary. I'm curious about this.
Well, I just used to make something up, a short one. Great Goddess Isis, please be with me, or something like that.
Cool. Interesting.
Please be with thee and guide my path, I think one of them went. So it was just something short and to focus my mind, and so I could slip away from the current problems and what's going on around. And just, I think that repetition, for me, I find it virtually impossible to completely clear my mind, as you should be for meditation. But I find that dancing, especially when you've got the beads, it's enough activity to keep the awkwardness of your brain ticking over and dizzy without shooting off everywhere. And I find that's the best way if I'm doing anything, what I would call meditation, or trying to get closer on a spiritual level.
Yeah, I appreciate the simplicity because I think these things actually are more simple than sometimes we have been conditioned to think they are in terms of connecting to these kind of energy fields or these archetypes.
Yes, I mean, sometimes if there's a group of people and it's nice, beautifully put together and there's the music and incense, and there is a completely different feeling, but that is really impossible to do on your own. You can have your little rituals, which I do. You know, you light the candles, light the incense, kneel down and things like that. But I suppose it's different to sitting at home, you know, drumming on your guitar or being part of an orchestra or a band. It is completely different, and what works for an individual is going to be different from what works for the group as a whole.
What are you writing now? Like what do you feel like you have to, you know, kind of are there works that you feel like you have to complete and put out there
there is, yes. I mean, I started off with the god Thoth, and I felt after a while that Isis was pushing me and you ought to be introduced, and I was very resistant, I had to say. But when I did decide that I would, you know, try and contact, I found him a very good mentor and guide, and particularly being a god of writing and wisdom, it just suited me, and that was really the impetus to start writing. And I look at him sort of like my tutor. And as I was coming to the end of that book, I looked at a section about how Hathor interacts with him. And so I read a bit about that, and then all of a sudden I was being pulled. And as I'm writing, there just seems to be these things coming up to say, well, we'll do that one next. Isis was the third book because I felt a bit overwhelmed about tackling her because she was just appeared too much to be able to do. So having got 2 books under my belt, as it were, I felt more confident to do it. I did. Hello, sorry, we lost the connection somehow.
Oh, don't worry. I was going to interrupt you and ask you what book was. I didn't get the book that you were saying that you read that was kind of like a formative. Who it was by? Is that what you were saying? You read a book that it was by some.
It was an academic book, out of print now, quite an old one. It was about Hathor and Thoth.
Got it.
Divided into 2 sections. And it was that one when he was explaining why he'd put the 2 together that really gave me a lead into Hathor.
Got it.
Yes. So there just seems to be, as I'm writing, a natural progression as to what is coming next.
Yeah.
My latest book, which is with the publishers at the moment, and I think she's opening it for pre-order, is about the serpents of Egypt, Cobra goddesses, the Uraeus, and the various other ones. There was an awful lot of information around, and there was a strong connection I found between, when I did my Sekhmet Bastet book, a lot of connection between the lion goddess and Serpent. And I thought, well, maybe this needs blowing up. So that seemed to flow in. So it is quite often a logical progression, because as I'm writing and reading, there might be something that I think that's interesting, I must follow up, but it's not relevant to the book at the time. So I would just put it in my notebook as a please follow up later. So it is quite a sort of a meandering, braided river than that. But I do feel there is a connection. Obviously, they're all deities of the same, of the ancient Egypt, so you would expect a lot of interconnection.
And have you, did you say that you're writing this book about the Naga, the serpent goddesses of Egypt, or you already have published it?
It is, I have written it. It is with the publisher at the moment.
Exciting. What's that? Do you have the name for it?
Yes, it's Cobra Goddess and Chaos Serpent.
Cobra Goddess and Chaos Serpent?
Yes.
Best name ever, Lesley. We're in. We like it. Wow, that's exciting. Do you know when it's going to be published?
No, I don't. And obviously things are a bit awry at the moment with the coronavirus problems. But
yes.
I had an email from her recently and she said she is progressing it. But obviously a lot of things are being delayed.
Yeah.
We're all in lockdown and things. So it is. She hasn't got a date at the moment, unlike we would normally expect.
We have a question, which is a question about Sekhmet and Bastet, and wondering, I was going to also ask just your experience. I had a very intense experience with Sekhmet in Egypt, and then why you didn't approach them first, which in anything around that we're curious about.
I think probably because I tend to be a fairly cautious person, and she came across, even though awe-inspiring, but I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be safe here. So it was after I'd got more used to the other deities that I understood more about her, that I wanted to approach her. When I did, it was probably different to what I had feared. But I think some goddesses will resonate more with you or from your personality point of view. I have got quite a few photos of her in my room. I've got pendants of which I wear quite a lot. So I do find her very inspiring and comforting, but in a different way from Isis. Isis is more, she's shown as a winged goddess. She's that maternal, protective wings around you, whereas Sekhmet will be by your side with a sword.
Yes.
So, yes, I did have connection. So I had that book when we went to Egypt 2 years ago, and I'd finished the book, and it was just about to come out as we were on the cruise. So I obviously was a lot more aware of her. So it really was wonderful to see her. But I think the most intense one that I had, which surprised me, we'd been to Turin in Italy to see the Egyptian Museum. And I don't know if you're aware of it, they have a huge hall which is full of Sekhmet statues, and it's done subdued lighting and polished black mirrors or marble, I can't remember. And that is a very intense, focusing that powerful energy.
Yeah, I don't think she likes to be, in museums. I just have this little feeling about it.
No, but
it pisses her off.
Yes, I think so. Well, obviously the statues were originally outside, but if the statues are outside Egypt, they are better protected in a museum. But obviously then that's the issue of should they be all sent back and things. But I don't know. You can talk around that for quite a long time.
Yeah.
It is, with her, it is always a very powerful energy, and I think it's, you compare her to Bastet, who was originally a lioness goddess, but then became the more gentler cat. You've got with Sekhmet that wildness, that she is someone you have to treat. I know you should treat all deities with respect, but she does need that respect because she is like a lion, wild and can be very dangerous.
Yes. Yes. And certainly, I mean, something I've talked a lot about is just I would put Sekhmet in the category of like a Kali frequency from Hinduism, and just that we don't really, as particularly as Westerners, I think we're not trained in the power of that kind of wrath, like the power of that, the constructive wrath, I guess would be a way I would put it. Which I do feel like it can be destructive, but it's used in a constructive way.
Yes, I agree. I don't know a lot about the Indian deities, but what I've read about Kali. It is a similar power, isn't it? It's that power, because there is sometimes you do get people saying, "Oh well, a bit dangerous. I don't want to know. Involved with death must be nasty, must be evil. I only want the nice, pretty thing." But
right.
that isn't reality. And you're right. It's what you do with that powerful energy, because it's like, as I said in my book, if you think of her as the sun, she can't live without the sun. But we could very easily die because of the sun. It's, you stand out and it's nice and warm, but at some stage you've got to come back in and shade.
Right.
It's exactly the same sun, it's exactly the same force coming through, but it's the intensity that you can cope with. We as humans, the planet, any animal, has got temperature range, and if it gets too hot, they're killed. But that doesn't make that power evil. It just means you have to know and understand what you're dealing with. Something is entirely essential to life, but it is also can be very dangerous.
Yeah. Good way of describing it. We have a question for you around, I may be saying the goddess name wrong, but Merit Seker, the Naga goddess who guards the Valley of the Kings.
Yes. Yes, I did. I have covered her in the Cobra goddess one. It is very interesting because she is very much a local goddess. You don't get her anywhere else but in this particular area, the Valley of the Kings. And I couldn't help feeling that there were probably other local goddesses, because she was found in the desert areas, and the people who encountered her set up these little shrines, the workers, and then they went away and she was forgotten. But all over Egypt there would have been quarries and workplaces, and they would have encountered other snakes and deities, but there's no record. So I think it's interesting that is that one glimpse of very much a local goddess. But I do like her name, which translates as she who loves silence. And
she who what? She who what?
Loves silence.
Loves silence, yes.
Yes. Yeah. So, that sounds as if it might be peaceful, but it is really, she likes the solitude. She doesn't want to be disturbed.
Yeah, she doesn't want to be fucked with, as they say.
That is correct.
We know about that, don't we?
Yes.
Amazing. I can't wait to read this new book of yours. I'm very excited about it. And I love talking with you. You're such an incredibly wise and knowledgeable woman. I just want to make sure everybody knows how to get in touch with you and get your books. Obviously, you can get them on Amazon, but I know you're not much of a social media person. We had to hunt you down to get you on the show. But what other means can people know more about your work?
Well, the Avalonia Press website will have details. That is, if people do want to contact me with specific questions, I'm quite happy if they use that email address that we used for communicating, and I can, if they want to, a specific question answered. But no, I am aware of the importance of social media, but it's something I find quite difficult to engage with.
Understood. You're going to have to, I'm sure you'll get emails from a bunch of millennials who want to become your social media director, Lesley. Okay, well, we'll put in the show notes your email. That's very kind of you. And I'm really honored to spend some time with you. And thank you for all of your work and your contribution to the planet.
Well, thank you. It has been lovely talking to you, and it's always nice that people ask questions in a different way so I can think about things, and it always inspires you to think a bit further and think, oh yes, I hadn't thought of that. So I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you,
Thank
Lesley.
you very much.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Reality Riffing. These are conversations that I think are important with people who are doing great things in the world about subject matters that need to be discussed. If you enjoyed the content, the conversation, please feel free to share with your people, share with your friends and family, rate the podcast below, and also subscribe.